Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next City of Echoes chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 33 and 34. Just before I start, I'll mention I do have YouTube channel membership and Patreon available if you'd like to help support the channel. And if you come in at the higher tier, you'll gain early access to videos in this series. But let's jump in here. These two chapters are quite interesting because they revealed basically to us our next kind of known character appearance in the book, and it's a relatively interesting one. It actually makes a ton of sense, and it kind of connects things together in an interesting way. He is the source of like some key information in terms of where we go next after this. But the significance here is that we are starting part 3 of the book. We obviously finished part 2 last time out, so from here on out we're in part 3. And yeah, we are straight into the mission to go to the Dai Li headquarters underneath Lake Laogai. So basically at the start of chapter 33, what we do is we highlight how they're actually going to get there. So Smellerbee and Longshot, of course, have been there. And they have some information about kind of other entries into that facility because they know the basic area, of course. Now, of course, you have to remember, where is Lake Laogai in Ba Sing Se? It's in the agrarian zone, meaning it's actually outside the lower ring. So what we're doing is we're moving from the lower ring, basically around the edge of the wall to the eastern kind of section of the wall. We're then going through the wall and to the section that will basically lead on to Lake Laogai on the eastern side. That's kind of what they're highlighting here. They have to be sort of stealthy as they make their way along the wall because there are Fire Nation guards, but they're stealthy enough to where they're able to make their way pretty nicely kind of overall. There's talk about, you know, like blasting Jelly as a potential option as one of the plans, but they're going to be more stealthy to kind of get there, of course. And yeah, they make their way to this pipe basically that goes through the wall, and that's how they're going to get from the lower ring into the agrarian zone to make their way to Lake Laogai. They give a little bit of a history lesson on this one, where like the Silver Fangs used this kind of pipe to kind of get product in and out of the lower ring. So it's a kind of known entity here. But yeah, they make their way over to kind of Lake Laogai, and they find one of the entrances on the way in. There's a bit of a description about how like there are multiple entrances into Lake Laogai because of course they have to be able to sort of close off the entrances but also maintain an airflow down into the base. So there are multiple entrances, but yeah, they move the grate out of the way, and they're basically going to have to, again, use a rope to make their way down, and that's exactly kind of what we do here. We do get interesting explanation here of part of the reason Smellerbee and Longshot know their way around and how to do this stuff so much is that the way they got Jet's body out of Lake Laogai was a bit of an event. They described that they had to fashion a sling for his body from Dai Li uniforms, and also that a sympathetic attendant down there actually helped them, like directed them on the best way to get out. And yeah, they had to get Jet's body then up the kind of shaft, out, and then again back through the wall into the lower ring. So that must have been a very kind of trying experience there of just having their dead friend with them, but knowing that they have to kind of bury him. It's something that they need to do for him. So interesting kind of other little bit of information surrounding Jet. But anyway, they make their way down there. There's a bit of a mention of like Chuan and his issue with heights at this point, but yeah, we eventually do make our way down here, and it's clear that there's been a lot of stuff that's happened here. It's mostly empty and kind of abandoned, but there are 2 guards down here. Now, Smellerbee immediately hurls herself at them and takes one of them out, and then Xuan takes one of the other ones out with a rock. Jin is a little bit taken aback by this because, you know, she's gradually getting more and more into this style of doing things, the kind of action focused thing being part of the Silver Fangs, but she was a little bit surprised to see them just immediately like switch into attack mode, which is a mentality that I suppose she's going to have to quickly develop if she wants to do more stuff like this. It speaks to how more veteran the others are at this sort of thing. So yeah, we just get descriptions of a lot of the stuff kind of going on down here. Rooms like filled with weapons and stuff like that. Zhuen steals one of the Dai Li uniforms, thinking that like this is going to be handy for later on, and it is going to be handy for later on. And they note some of the kind of other kind of equipment that they have there, especially the metal chains and handcuffs that the Dai Li use to basically imprison other earthbenders. And Jin notes that like it's a bit ominous looking at them because these are items built to kind of capture people like her as an earthbender. So that's interesting. They get to the barracks and they just note that there's like space for like 100 people to stay down here. So there's at least like 100 Dai Li in training plus whoever many others there are. So that's pretty interesting. Then we get to the cells. This is the really important part of the chapter, the prison cells. So there are two cells next to each other that are inhabited. One has an older man in it, and then we'll find out shortly that some of the other Judees candidates are in the other cell. But first we address who the older man is. So when they get in there, they wake him up, they kind of roughly free him. They're kind of like, who are you? And then the second he looks up, Chuan actually realizes immediately who he is, and it is General Sung primarily from the drill, but of course, you know, he's a Council of 5 member. He's one of the Ba Sing Se generals. He's a very notable person overall, even though I think his like the reputation he has, I suppose, from the fandom towards him is he's the incompetent, like high up leader guy that we meet that kind of represents some of the Ba Sing Se leadership. So what they kind of do here with his appearance in this and the next chapter is they kind of attempt to fix his reputation a little bit, that he isn't just this idiot general. That was a factor in how he handled the drill, but there's a reason he is a general, and we highlight some of his more competent moments while also addressing, you know, his involvement as a kind of leader within Ba Sing Se and the fact that there's been so much like conspiracy kind of going on. So a lot of stuff that we're going to address here with General Sung. And Chuan is immediately like, oh, you were supposed to be defending the outer wall. No wonder you're stuck down here to rot when you failed so miserably. He tries to defend himself and says, like, you know, I helped the Avatar when the Fire Nation brought the drill to break through the wall. Then they locked me here. Not much I can do from a prison cell. Smellerbee, of course, met Team Avatar. So she's kind of like, somehow I heard a different version of the story. I heard from the Avatar himself that you were more of a hindrance. So, yeah. And he's about to defend himself, but then because she mentioned Aang, his face falls. And he says, the Avatar was a pleasant enough young man, a boy really, who tried his best. He really did. And you know, the kind of tense he's using here. He came to the city to join the Earth King's party and then flew off again. This is what Jin says about him. This is the last they know of him, is that Smellerbee and Longshot, the last they saw Team Avatar was like as they left in Lake Laogai, and then from context around the city they know that, like, I guess they succeeded for the most part immediately afterwards, but they don't know the full extent of the overall plot in terms of recently what happened to the team. So the question is, okay, that's the last we heard, where are they now? And then Sung is like, you didn't hear that, he's dead. And it's this shocking ending to the chapter, because for Jin this is a shock, but especially for Smellerbee, this is a shock. Longshot's of course not here, of course, because he's injured. So as we go into chapter 34, we start with the reaction to, they've just heard the Avatar is dead, apparently. And she's like, that's impossible, I saw him not that long ago. And Jin in the narration is kind of like, the world needs him so much, he's dead. I didn't realize how much hope I placed in his appearance, even if I didn't want to admit it. How much I wanted to believe he could make a difference until now, knowing he's gone. And he goes on to sort of like, this is what he knows to kind of confirm that this happened. I have it on good knowledge that he was struck by lightning called forth by Princess Azula herself. They carried his body away on a sky bison. And Smellerbee actually gets very upset about this. And Jin is a little bit surprised by like how intense the reaction is, and that like, okay, she knew the Avatar, like they were with Team Avatar for a little bit, but the hope of the Avatar also had like an impact on her as well. And Jin is kind of thinking like, wow, meeting the team, meeting the Avatar, it must have had like a big impact. And yeah, if the Avatar is dead, that means there truly isn't anyone who can save us now, because this is the context of this story, is that they're here to try and find information on Susu. And now they've just heard that basically any hope for the war sort of coming to an end in like a good way for like the Earth Kingdom, for Ba Sing Se, probably is out the window if this is like fully confirmed. So it is a major blow, and I really like that they do bring this up here, that like how much hope can you have after this? This is mostly now a survive situation, but they still want to get Susu back, of course. So yeah, General Sung wishes he had better news for them. Highlights the idea that the Council of Five has been disbanded. They've all been captured. Some of them are under like house arrest. Others are in prison. Their families have been threatened. There's nothing that they can really do. All their power has been taken away. He does note that, you know, I'll share as much information as I can, but you have to let me kind of go free, is sort of his idea. Now, then we get to addressing the whole idea of, you know, what do you know about Ju Di? So this is what Jin asks of him. So he says that, oh, you mean the cultural ambassadors, the Ju Dis? They had a hard time telling them apart, so they just started giving them the same name, and it stuck. And they're all repulsed by this, the fact that he's just so casually talking about this. As in, you knew the Dai Li were brainwashing people? And he says, how else can we keep order? They trained the Ju Dis here, there are a few of them next door, in the cell next door. And there's that whole idea. He does eventually get around to the idea of like, believe me, I have no sympathies for the Dai Li. I admit I haven't been the most dutiful in my post, but my loyalty still lies with the Earth Kingdom. I will never betray the Earth King for a foreign nation. So yeah, that's kind of where they go with that, is that, you know, he's inadvertently kind of involved in the full situation. Did he know the full extent of like the conspiracy within the walls? Perhaps kind of not, but the fact that like he seemed okay with the idea of the Ju Dis being a thing to sort of help to maintain order within the walls is obviously a bit of a like kind of situation overall. But anyway, then they go into the next cell, so they meet the other Ju Dis. They do reveal straight away Susu is not there. They're doing their best to kind of stick together and survive. They note that the youngest here are about 14, and the oldest goes up to about 25. So there's a lot of different girls in here. So yeah, immediately Jin goes in and is just like straight away intense, like, I'm looking for Su Yun Wen. Have any of you seen her? Like blah blah blah, like really kind of freaking them out with her like intensity. And Schwen steps in and is like, you know, you're scaring them, like take a step back here. And he's the one who takes control of the situation by highlighting, we're not affiliated with the Dai Li, this is just a disguise. We're here to find someone, but we're also here to get you out. And there's a bit of a discussion like, are we doing that? Like, can we do that? Are we sure we can actually accomplish all of that stuff? But yes, they are actually going to do that. We are going to get you back to your families overall. This is where one of the girls comes over and says, like, there used to be more of us. They would come in here and force us to stand in line, and they would select a few of us for special training. Most of those girls never came back, but sometimes we would hear crying or screaming. So this is the idea of, like, these are, I suppose, the Ju Di candidates, and then they would pick specific ones to, I guess, actually truly become the Ju Dis. And so I guess the idea is that Susu has been taken away from here, having succeeded, of course, in becoming a Ju Di, and that's the kind of situation there. And then, yeah, this is where General Sung gives extra context on this of like, yeah, what I heard was that they'd mentioned like Laogai, that if any of the Ju Dis would behave out of sorts, they would, you know, take them for recalibration basically every month so that the brainwashing would continue to take. And again, it's this idea of like, you know, oh, you know that, and kind of let it happen as a kind of high up leader. And Jin, of course, hates this. You know, they're not objects, they're people. He does say, those were the terms that they told me. Like, I didn't choose those words myself. So that's that. So the question is then, okay, where do the duties get taken once they sort of succeed and are actually trained? So this is the key part in terms of setting up what is to come. The Dai Li operate out of one of the wings of the palace, and that's where we assume Susu is sort of stationed most of the time. And then we finally do address the idea of like the intensity of Jin here, of like Smellerbee actually noting that even when you're happy, you scare people sometimes, Jin. And it's just like, hey, like maybe read the room a little bit before you kind of immediately get straight into the kind of mission kind of stuff. But this is where they then notice that the guards that, of course, they kind of captured earlier on are now gone. They've kind of freed themselves from their ropes, and it's a bit of a kind of panic stations here where it feels like, oh, they're going to alert everyone, this is going to be a disaster. But General Sung, they have General Sung now, and he's basically like, hey, I'll help you, but you again have to let me go. And they note that like, hey, I'm loyal, you know, I've got 2 daughters at home, I'm not completely heartless, I am going to help, of course. And then they address the idea of like, okay, what are we actually going to do here? And Jin is actually the one to make the choice here, which I thought was quite interesting. She basically just says that, okay, we have to make sure they can't come back to this place and rebuild it. We might not be able to stop them from making more duties, but we can at least destroy their base. And so Jin basically is the one to be like, we gotta wreck this place. So the reason when we get to Legend of Korra that we see that the Dai Li base is flooded, basically, completely submerged in water, like ruined effectively, is because of this incident post our main characters kind of being here. Jin and Co come in, and they are the ones who, as we'll see over the rest of this chapter, end up leading to the flooding of the Dai Li base, so it becomes unusable. It's just such a fun connection that this book now reveals to us, that like, yeah, like it's Jin, General Sung, Smellerbee and Xuan are the ones who kind of lead to the Dai Li base being flooded, which I think is cool. So yeah, they get the blasting jelly from the armory. So I love the idea that's the Smellerbee approach of just always just grab some blasting jelly and we'll use it somewhere. But Sung notes that, hey, the structure of this place is held up by several key pillars that I can move with my earthbending, basically. I'll do that if you let me go. Like, I'll run distraction, basically, while also kind of taking down the main structures. You then blow the entrance after kind of we all get out here. So that's the idea here. And they do trust him to kind of go and do this. So kind of he heads off on his own. It's a bit rapid fire at this point, but, you know, there's a little bit of a distraction, and then he comes back and is just straight away like, yeah, I've taken care of the 2 guards, part of the entrance is already collapsed, I'll just go take out the other pillars, and then, yeah, use the blasting jelly. So, yeah, they do that. It turns out that actually they probably didn't need to use the blasting jelly, because just the structural damage was probably enough with the taking out all the pillars, but the extra explosions was also a nice touch, basically, to add on to that. And just before General Sung goes off on his own to safety, he says, one more thing that might help you. There's a solar eclipse coming. If you're looking to save your friend from the palace, that's a good day to do it. Firebenders will lose their bending for the duration of the eclipse. If you're ready, you might be able to take advantage of it. How do you know this? Because I met the Avatar. He was a nice young man. It gave me hope for the future. He was attempting to stop the Fire Lord before he was murdered. They were going to confront him to force a stop to all this madness. And so they end on the note of, the first day of the 8th month, the Earth remembers. Good luck. And that's where we end the chapter. So, nice little appearance here from General Sung, showing us a bit of a different side to his character, where, yes, there's a lot for him to sort of make amends for, but he does some decent work here in terms of helping them take out the base, giving them the really key piece of information that they need to try and get Susu back, which is the previously super important information, secret information about the eclipse, but now Jin and Co have it. So like everyone has it, and it sets up another idea of, okay, yeah, the crazy situation that from earlier on in the chapter of like, how on earth are we going to get to the palace to get her? Now suddenly there's an option where like there's a day where it won't be as like crazy dangerous to do this. Everyone will be distracted, and that is our one opportunity. So it's the clear setup for the next stage of the book. And also just the idea that, oh yeah, this book is going into book 3, like deep into book 3 here. This is not just we're locked into the Ba Sing Se arc. We're highlighting what we're doing, and we're going into the halfway point of book 3 if we're getting the eclipse and beyond. So exciting stuff there. So I really like this one. I like a lot of the details, the explanation on like here's why where the Dai Li base got flooded from, them freeing the other Judy girls that they have down here. That's a nice little kind of extra thing where in the middle of the like Laogai episode, of course, remember they walk past and they kind of see, we get that look at the room with the Judys being kind of trained as we kind of make our way in. But we don't address the idea that we actually do anything to stop that, whereas this book helps to explain how that was stopped. So a lot of nice details kind of happening here, in addition to General Sung is not as incompetent as we once thought. There's actually something to him, and he really just kind of, I suppose, crumbled under the pressure of the crazy drill attacking. He didn't know what to do, but there's hope for him, I suppose, is sort of the idea there. So some pretty nice kind of action sequence stuff here. I'm bringing everything together, but we move on with the action, and like I said, we're pretty kind of rapid fire, going from kind of mission to mission for like the rest of the book, but we'll go through it, of course. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on these 2 chapters, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.